Welcome to At Issue. I'm your host, Steve Stavro. This week, we're going to be discussing the Vatican's role in the New World Order. Joining us is Bill Hughes, and thank you for being with us, Bill. Bill's an author, researcher, and pastor of the church here in Umatilla, Florida. I hope I said that right. Umatilla, Florida.
You got it, Steve.
And if you would, Bill, let's just launch into this discussion with what do you think the Vatican's role is in the New World Order?
Steve, I think ultimately they control every aspect of the New World Order, from the political leaders, the financial gurus of our world today, and also the churches of today. I think that's the clear picture that we have.
Okay.
And all the research that I have done, Steve, pinpoints the domination of the Vatican in the world affairs of today. It's very secretive, Steve, in their involvement in all of these things, because they look like they're so good and trying to promote peace and trying to promote harmony throughout the world. But in actuality, they're the ones that are pulling the strings behind the scenes. And again, in the political, religious, and economic realms of this world.
Okay. And for those who are not familiar with the workings of the Vatican, maybe we should just touch on who controls the Vatican when we say that word, what the Vatican means, the papacy, of course, but maybe who is controlling the papacy and who do you see as wielding the power behind the throne, as to say it in a certain way?
Well, in a spiritual context, Steve, Vatican means the divining serpent. And the serpent throughout history, whether it be biblical history, whether it be secular history, as far back as the Garden of Eden, the serpent, of course, was the medium through which the devil sought to destroy our first parents, Adam and Eve. So ultimately, the devil is behind the Vatican. Now, when you look at in a human point of view, it's clear from history that the Jesuit order, which is the military arm of the Catholic Church, that they control the white pope, the one who we all see out in front. At this point, of course, it's Pope Benedict XVI. But ultimately, the one behind the white pope is the black pope, the Jesuit general.
And when you say the military arm of the Vatican, I think it's important that we say you're not speaking hyperbole, you're speaking literally. They have a history of being assassins. If we could touch on just a few things in their history, maybe that's the way to approach this. Let's go back to 1517, Martin Luther's come on the scene, and the whole Protestant Reformation has begun.
When you look at history, Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses on the door at Wittenberg in 1517. And from there, of course, he stood before the Diet of Worms and Charles V in 1521. The Reformation spread like wildfire because people for centuries had listened to tradition and had listened to lies and myths and foolishness. And so when Luther came in with his two great themes, one of sola fide, by faith alone, and the other sola scriptura, the Bible and the Bible only, Steve, these sent a shockwave throughout Europe. And the Vatican, that had stood so strong and so powerful for so long, they were shaken at their very foundations. And so you come up to the diets that were held. Of course, the Diet of Worms in 1521, the Diet of Spires in 1526, the Diet of Augsburg in 1530. Charles V sought every possible means to destroy the Reformation of Martin Luther. But he couldn't stop it. And so in the 1530s, you have the rise of a man by the name of Ignatius Loyola, and Loyola's intent was to destroy the Protestant Reformation of Luther and other reformers who started to rise throughout Europe. Well, by 1540, the Jesuit order was established. It was established for two basic reasons, very simply. It was established, number one, to destroy everything that the Protestant Reformation stood for. And the other thing is that as it would destroy the Protestant Reformation, it would reestablish the authority and power of the Roman Catholic Church. In that light, it's so critical that we understand everything that the Protestant Reformation stood for. Most people who still understand the Protestant Reformation think it was simply a religious movement. Well, of course, it was a powerful religious movement, but it infiltrated, it filtered into every aspect of human life. It had power and authority in government, because prior to the Reformation, there had been no such thing as republican government. It had all been monarchical, where you have a person dominating the populace. But the Protestant Reformation brought in the idea and the principle that there could be republican, representative government. In the economic realm, through the Dark Ages, when the papacy ruled, you had the wealthy class, you had the very, very rich, you had the very, very poor. Well, the Protestant Reformation brought in the concept of a middle class, that people could earn a living, and based on their talents and their skills and their hard work, they could make their own money. So the Protestant Reformation brought in representative government, it brought in a middle class, and then, of course, in the religious arena, it brought in the fact that people could worship God not as their pope or their priest told them to do, right, but they could go to God through Jesus Christ and not have to go through any man.
So, no middleman.
No middleman, Steve. That's exactly right.
Right.
So these concepts, they came, and these are the fruits of the Protestant Reformation. And wherever you see those things, it's because of Protestantism. And wherever you see them under attack, you know that you see the footprints of the Jesuits. And just real quickly, Steve, without getting too far off, when you see what happened in the 1990s with Jesuit-trained President Bill Clinton, who went to Georgetown University, when he passed the North American Free Trade Agreement called NAFTA, which sent just thousands and thousands of middle-class jobs out of the United States of America and sent them to third world countries. Steve, you can see the footprints of the Jesuits all over that document to destroy the middle class in the United States of America, so that two classes could be developed in this country.
An attempt to get us back to the Dark Ages, back to where you have, as you're saying, the wealthy, the poor, but on top of both groups, you have the papacy.
Absolutely, Steve.
The papacy being the man who is God. And these are several papal statements. These are bulls that are, I'm not sure if they're bulls, but they're statements being made throughout history.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a host of Catholic documents where the Pope takes the name of God, Lord God.
That the Pope is Jesus Christ on this planet.
He claims to be the vicar of Christ. On his tiara throughout history, it has always read Vicarius Filii Dei, which means I am the agent of God. I am God on this earth. So, That's where all of this is heading, Steve. All of this New World Order, we're heading rapidly as we see the destruction of the middle class, as we see the destruction of Republican government, where we see more and more power being taken by the federal government. We see that in America as you and I are speaking. Just in the very last several weeks, we have the passage of that health care bill, which takes tremendous power and puts it into the hands of a few people in Washington, D.C., which completely decimates republicanism, where the power rests with the people. So we see these great strides being made, not just in America, but around the world, to have power put in the hands of a few and the destruction of the middle class. So we see the power of the Jesuit order working to reestablish papal authority and supremacy in this earth.
And so, Bill, do you see this as a fulfillment of what the Holy Alliance was trying to achieve back in the 1800s, the early 1800s?
There's no question, Steve, because the Holy Alliance was established at the Congress of Vienna right around 1814, 1815, under the Austrian ruler named Clemens von Metternich. Von Metternich, along with the Pope at that time, I believe it was Pius VII, and a host of European powers got together in Vienna. They then subsequently met 8 years later at Verona, and then there was a secret meeting in Cherie in 1825. And Steve, the whole goal of those three congresses, of those three meetings, were to destroy representative government throughout the world. And so we find in our world today, in fulfillment of those three congresses, the taking out of the people's hands authority in their countries and it being settled in the hands of just a few people. And again, we saw that with the health care bill just recently in America. That health care bill takes tremendous power out of the hands of people and puts it at Washington, D.C. So this is in fulfillment of those three congresses. And, you know, another aspect of it, Steve, that's so critical for our understanding of what is happening in America today in light of those congresses is that in 1814 and 1815, according to Burke McCarty's book, The Suppressed Truth About the Assassination of Lincoln, another book that I have here, written by a man by the name of Richard Thompson, who was an American Secretary of the Navy. He wrote the book called The Footprints of the Jesuits, and he nails down that at the Congress of Vienna in 1814, 1815, the Jesuit order was determined to be that group of men that would seek to destroy representative government in the world. And the primary focus, the bullseye, if you will, of the Congress of Vienna was a rising power across the shores of the Atlantic called the United States of America.